What happens when the man who owns 13 steakhouses walks into one of them, and no one knows who he is? Zeke Langston leaned back in the passenger seat of the rented sedan, tugging at the fake beard that itched under his jaw. The dark gray hoodie and baseball cap helped finish off the disguise. He looked nothing like the clean-shaven CEO in a tailored suit whose photo hung in the corporate office. That was the point. Most of the employees across his 13 locations had never met him face to face. They knew the name, but not the man. The steakhouse he was headed to sat on the edge of downtown Indianapolis, store number 9. It wasn't the worst performing one, but something about the numbers didn't add up. Table turnover was slow. Labor costs were low, too low. And despite decent online reviews, a few customer complaints had mentioned feeling unwelcome or rushed. Zeke didn't like vague. Vague made it hard to fix things. He wanted to see the place from the ground level, just a regular guy grabbing dinner. He'd told the district manager he was out of state for board meetings. The manager of the store, a guy named Chuck, had never met him in person. None of the floor staff had. The chain had grown fast after Zeke inherited it from his dad 3 years ago. Too fast, maybe. He walked in just past 6:30 prime dinner rush. The place smelled like sizzling ribeye and garlic butter. Warm lighting, polished wood, soft jazz playing overhead. On the outside, it looked good. "Just one?" asked the hostess, a young woman with tired eyes and a polite smile. "Yeah," Zeke said, voice low. "Any table's fine." She led him to a booth near the back, handed him a menu, and left without much else. No small talk. No welcome. There was a weird tension in the air. Servers moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. No one looked relaxed. Zeke watched. A waiter, a tall, slim guy with a buzz cut and worn shoes, approached a nearby table with a soft tone. "I'm really sorry again about the wait," he said to an older man and a little girl. "Kitchen's backed up, but I'll make sure your order's out next. I got you a lemonade, no charge." The little girl smiled. The man looked exhausted but nodded. Zeke's own server showed up minutes later. A young woman with a tight ponytail and a clipped voice. "You ready to order? No intro? No specials?" he asked, more curious than annoyed. "We're short-staffed," she said flatly. "Ribeye or filet?" Zeke ordered the ribeye, medium rare. No smile. No warmth. She wrote it down and walked off. He leaned back, watching the floor. Chuck, the manager, stood near the host stand, arms crossed. He wasn't helping. Just watching, occasionally muttering to the hostess. When a drink spilled at table 11, Chuck didn't move. The waiter with the buzz cut did, rushing to grab towels, calming the table with a few jokes. Zeke checked the name tag as the guy passed, Travis. Then something happened that made Zeke sit up. A young woman, early 20s, maybe, walked in holding a purse with both hands. She looked nervous. Her clothes were clean but worn. She sat at the bar, flipping through a menu with shaky fingers. Travis noticed her. He walked over quietly, leaned on the bar, and spoke with a gentle tone. "Hey, how's your night going?" The girl gave a small shrug. "Just hungry." "You want the chicken or the sirloin?" he asked, like it wasn't a big deal. "Chicken's cheaper," she said quickly. "I've got like $10, but I can tip." Travis waved it off. "It's on me. Just don't tell Chuck. He counts every plate." The girl's eyes widened. "Seriously?" He smiled and nodded. "Seriously?" Zeke's jaw tightened. He watched as Travis pulled out his own wallet behind the bar and slipped a 20 into the register. No drama. No show. Just quiet kindness. Minutes later, Chuck stormed over. "Why's she eating at the bar?" he snapped. "She's a friend," Travis said smoothly. "She's good." Chuck gave him a long look, then walked off muttering. Zeke's ribeye arrived. It was dry, overcooked, no sauce. He didn't touch it. Instead, he watched Chuck bark at the hostess again. Watched the other staff avoid him. Watched Travis clean up another table, refill waters, check on guests, and do it all with a calm, steady rhythm. His shoes were soaked from the spill earlier. Still, he moved like he cared. Zeke waited an hour, then paid and left. He didn't want to blow his cover yet. Not until he had more information. Back in his rental car, he took off the cap and beard, staring out the windshield. He'd seen enough to know something was wrong, but he hadn't seen everything yet. The next evening, Zeke returned, same hoodie, same beard, same low profile. This time he came earlier, just before the dinner rush began. He wanted to see the gears turning before they jammed. The hostess, a different one tonight, didn't look up when he walked in. Her voice was flat. "Bar or booth?" "Booth," Zeke said. She handed him a menu without making eye contact and gestured toward a small table near the server station. He took his seat and started watching. No one was smiling. The air felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for something to go wrong. Chuck was already on the floor, arms folded near the POS system. His eyes didn't rest on any one spot for long. They scanned, like he was hunting for someone to mess up. He said something to the hostess, who nodded quickly and kept her eyes down. Zeke noticed the bar area was short-staffed. Only one bartender, middle-aged, wiping down glasses in silence. The usual hum of casual conversation was missing. Customers weren't complaining, but they weren't comfortable either. Felt transactional: eat, pay, leave. Travis wasn't on the floor yet. Zeke flagged down a passing server, a tall woman with dark circles under her eyes and a worn apron. Her name tag read Erica. "You my server tonight?" he asked. She shook her head. "I'll let yours know." She didn't come back. He waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Still no one. He wasn't there for the food, but he kept the roll up. Finally, a young man in a wrinkled button-down shirt approached. He looked out of breath and his shirt was damp at the collar. "Sorry about the wait. I'm Jake. What can I get you?" Zeke nodded. "Water to start. You guys short tonight?" Jake exhaled, glancing toward the kitchen. "It's like this every night lately. 2 people called out, 1 just quit. But Chuck says the schedule's locked. So we manage." Zeke studied him. "You always covering this section?" Jake laughed once without humor. "This one and half of the back. I used to just bus. Got promoted last week. No training, just a new apron." A bell rang from the kitchen. Jake flinched. "I'll get your water." As Jake rushed off, Zeke saw Travis enter through the side door. His hair was still damp from a quick shower, and he was tucking his shirt into his jeans as he walked. Chuck intercepted him. "You're late." "I clocked in on time. Just came through the back," Travis replied calmly. "You're still late. Not acceptable. I stayed 2 hours past close last night. You signed off on that." Chuck didn't respond. He just turned away. Travis headed to the bar, nodded to the bartender, then noticed Zeke at the booth. A flicker of recognition passed over his face, but he didn't say anything. He grabbed a tray and started clearing nearby tables. From his seat, Zeke watched Travis work. He didn't rush, but he didn't slow down either. He moved with a quiet efficiency, pausing only to check in with guests or help Jake with heavier trays. No task seemed beneath him. He refilled waters, stacked plates, and stepped into the kitchen twice to grab sides when orders were missed. At one point, Travis passed a couple waiting near the entrance. "No one's greeted us yet," the man said, glancing at his watch. Travis didn't hesitate. "I can seat you. Table for 2. He grabbed menus and led them to a booth, even though it wasn't his job. The hostess didn't seem to notice, or maybe she was pretending not to. Zeke stood and walked toward the restroom, passing Chuck near the line window. "Where's the rest of your staff?" Zeke asked quietly, testing the waters. Chuck turned, sizing him up. "People don't want to work. We hire, they quit. So we get by with who shows up." Zeke raised an eyebrow. "You ever jump in to help?" Chuck crossed his arms. "That's not my role. I manage." "They serve?" Zeke nodded, then walked past him without another word. In the restroom, he leaned against the sink and stared into the mirror. The beard was slipping slightly at one edge. He adjusted it and stared at his own reflection. The problem wasn't just understaffing. It was a culture issue. A leadership issue. When he came back out, a commotion caught his attention. At the far end of the dining room, a woman in a faded green coat was arguing quietly with the hostess. Her son, maybe 6 or 7, clung to her hand. She looked embarrassed. "I had a reservation," she said. "It was for 6. Under Maya." The hostess looked panicked. "We don't see it. The system cleared some names earlier. I can put you on the wait list." "I called this morning." Chuck appeared behind the hostess. "We're full. She'll have to wait like everyone else." Travis stepped in before the woman could respond. "Table 7 just opened. I'll clean it now." Chuck frowned. "That's not your call." Travis didn't slow down. He grabbed a rag and menus and headed toward the table. In less than a minute, he had it cleared and reset. "Maya," he called gently. She hesitated, then followed. Her son looked up at Travis as they passed. "Thank you," she said, voice low. "Glad you're here," he replied. Zeke sat down again, just in time for Jake to return with his water. "You ever think about leaving?" Zeke asked him. Jake looked caught off guard. "Honestly, every week. But I need the money. And the team's solid, even if the management isn't." Zeke nodded. "Travis seems solid." Jake glanced over at him. "He's the only reason half of us haven't walked out." Zeke watched Travis kneel to pick up a dropped fork for a kid at another table. It wasn't dramatic, just thoughtful. Then something shifted. From the kitchen, a loud crash echoed. A tray of dishes had toppled behind the line. A younger cook stood frozen as broken plates and sauce splattered across the floor. Chuck stormed over. "What the hell was that?" The cook barely got a word out. "I tripped. You cost us another $50 in plates. You think we can afford that?" Travis appeared at the edge of the kitchen. "He just slipped. It happens." Chuck turned to him. "Stay out of it. This is my kitchen." Travis didn't move. "He's doing 2 stations alone. You're burning people out." "That's what causes mistakes." Zeke stood quietly and walked to the bar. From there, he could see everything: Chuck fuming, Travis standing his ground, the cook wiping sauce off his apron with shaking hands. The moment passed, but the tension didn't. When Travis returned to the floor, Zeke approached him. "You always this hands-on?" Zeke asked casually. Travis shrugged. "If I don't do it, no one will." "You ever talk to the owner?" Travis shook his head. "Never met him. Don't think he knows this place exists." Zeke let that hang in the air for a second. Then he asked, "If you could change one thing here, what would it be?" Travis looked around, then met his eyes. "I'd start by listening. People here care. They just stopped believing anyone above them does." It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was honest. Zeke nodded slowly. "I believe you." The shift ended around 10. Zeke left before closing, but not before slipping a folded note into the register. It wasn't signed, but it had his private number. "Call me. Midnight if you have to." He didn't know if Travis would use it, but he hoped he would. Because the next step wasn't watching anymore. It was fixing. Travis didn't call that night. Zeke waited, phone silent beside him on the hotel nightstand. He watched the red digital clock crawl toward 2 in the morning before finally turning it face down. He didn't blame the man. Trust took time and he hadn't exactly earned it yet. Not from the floor staff. The next morning, Zeke parked across from the steakhouse before daylight. No disguise. No hoodie. No beard. Just him. He'd been up since 5, replaying every moment of the last 2 nights. The dry steak didn't matter. The undercooked culture did. And Travis had given him something he hadn't felt in months. Clarity. He waited outside until just after 7, watching a sleepy prep cook unlock the side entrance before slipping in with a crate of onions. A few minutes later, Chuck's car pulled in. Zeke watched the man step out, tie undone, sipping from a travel mug and scrolling through his phone as he walked in through the front. Zeke followed. Inside, the place was dim. Chairs still flipped upside down on tables. The scent of bleach lingered from the overnight cleaning. Chuck stood behind the host stand, tapping at the screen. He didn't look up when Zeke approached. "You're not supposed to be in here." "We open at 11, Chuck said without lifting his eyes. Zeke stepped forward, slow and steady. "I know." Chuck glanced up and froze. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Recognition hit him like a slap. Zeke let the silence hang. "I suggest we talk in your office," he said. Chuck led the way without a word, shoulders tense. Behind the closed door, Zeke didn't sit. "You've been here how long?" 13 months, Chuck said quickly. "I was brought in to stabilize labor costs. Manage the transition after the last GM left." Zeke nodded once. "You stabilized. I'll give you that. You stabilized morale into the ground." "I've kept turnover low," Chuck added. "We're under budget most quarters. Guests don't complain often." Zeke leaned forward, voice calm. "You think silence means satisfaction? People don't complain because they've already decided not to come back." Chuck's jaw tightened. "If this is about the kid who got a free meal, I can discipline the server." But Zeke cut him off with a glance. "That kid ate because one of your employees used his own paycheck to make sure she didn't go hungry. That's not discipline. That's decency." Chuck looked away. "I didn't know. That's the problem." Zeke walked toward the window. The parking lot was still half empty. Just a few cooks and Travis's beat-up sedan. "You've created a place where people are afraid to be human. No one should have to hide kindness." Chuck shifted in his seat. "I run a tight operation. We've hit targets." Zeke turned around. "Targets aren't leadership, and your team doesn't trust you. You don't earn loyalty by standing still while your floor drowns." Chuck finally met his eyes. "What are you planning to do?" Zeke pulled a folded sheet from his jacket pocket and placed it on the desk. "Effective immediately, you're being reassigned out of store management. You'll transition to an admin role at corporate. Data analysis. No team oversight." Chuck opened his mouth, but Zeke raised a hand. "You're not being fired, but you won't set the tone here anymore." Chuck stared at the paper, then nodded once and stood. "I'll gather my things." Zeke waited until the door shut behind him before exhaling. He didn't like humiliating people. But this wasn't about one mistake, it was about everything that had gone unsaid and uncorrected under Chuck's watch. By 10, the staff began trickling in. Zeke stayed in the office, giving them space. At 10:30, Travis walked in through the side, hair damp again, sleeves rolled. When he stepped into the manager's office to check the schedule, he stopped cold. Zeke stood by the whiteboard, erasing Chuck's handwriting. Travis blinked, one hand still on the doorframe. "You're the guy from booth 14. Zeke nodded. "I am." Travis stepped in slowly, cautious. "You're also Zeke Langston. I saw your picture once in the training packet." Zeke gave a small smile. "I figured you might connect the dots." Travis looked at the empty desk, the blank schedule board, then back at Zeke. "Where's Chuck?" "Reassigned. He'll be working with corporate now. No direct reports." Travis didn't react right away. "I didn't expect that." "I did." Zeke motioned toward the schedule board. "I'm asking for your help, not to take over, not to fix everything. Just to help steady the ship until we bring in a new GM." Travis hesitated. "I'm not a manager. You're not on paper. But you've been managing every shift I've seen." Travis folded his arms. "I've got no degree. No training outside of what I've learned here." Zeke leaned on the desk. "Empathy doesn't require a degree. Awareness doesn't come from a manual." Travis exhaled, then nodded once. "I'll do what I can. But I'm not covering for bad policy." Zeke's voice stayed even. "You won't be. You'll be helping me rebuild it." Travis stepped back into the hallway without another word. Zeke watched him go, then turned back to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. By the lunch shift, the tone had already shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but noticeably. Zeke stayed out of the way, taking a seat at the bar with a tablet, quietly observing. Travis moved differently now, more deliberate, more vocal. He checked in with Erica at the server station, asked Jake if he needed help with his trays, made sure the hostess had the new seating chart. Zeke noticed something else. The cooks were talking more. Not joking, not relaxed, but communicating. Coordinating. One of them, a guy with a sleeve tattoo and a thick accent, stepped out of the kitchen to hand off a plate directly to a server, something Zeke hadn't seen the previous nights. He leaned over to Travis when he passed. What changed in the kitchen? Travis kept his eyes forward. They saw Chuck leave. That alone shifted something. Zeke nodded slowly. By the time the dinner rush started, the place still felt tense but no longer brittle. Servers weren't darting like prey. Orders were still delayed, but customers were being told early. One couple even complimented the staff's composure on the way out. Zeke stayed past closing. He helped stack chairs, wiped down a few booths. No one said anything about it, but a few nodded in his direction. Erica offered him a bottle of water without prompting. At 11:30, Travis approached him near the supply closet. Why this store? You've got 12 others. Zeke leaned against the wall. Numbers didn't add up. People weren't returning. I followed the patterns. Travis looked down at his shoes, then back up. You gonna do this at the other stores? Zeke gave a small nod. Eventually, but not undercover. That was a one-time move. Travis chuckled softly. I thought you were a food critic the first night. I'm worse, Zeke said. I'm the guy who built the place without realizing the foundation was off. Travis studied him. Well, now you're here. That counts. Zeke thought about that as he locked up with the last of the crew. The night air was cool. The street silent. He didn't fix everything. Not yet. But the first crack had been sealed. And in the morning, he'd start rebuilding from that seam. By the end of the week, Zeke had cleared his calendar. No investor meetings. No strategy calls. Just one mission. Steady the ground beneath store number 9. He arrived each morning just after opening and stayed until the last lock clicked after close. Not to hover, he made that clear early, but to understand. He took his meals standing by the kitchen pass, listened to every customer who lingered long enough to speak, and kept his tablet open only to take notes quietly, privately. Not once did he carry a clipboard. Travis didn't claim the GM title. He didn't need it. He coordinated schedules on the fly, stepped into gaps without being asked, and spoke to the staff with the kind of steady tone that made chaos manageable. He didn't pretend the pressure was gone. No one did. But there was a noticeable difference now. People didn't whisper when they saw the owner walk by. They didn't flinch when someone dropped a tray. Still, they were stretched thin. That hadn't changed. Zeke knew there weren't enough servers to handle weekends properly, and the kitchen was down 2 line cooks. Hiring wasn't instant, and he knew better than to throw in temps who didn't know the system. So he focused on what could be changed now. On the 5th day, he pulled Travis aside in the storage hallway beneath the flickering exit sign that hadn't worked right in weeks. I want to implement a new system. Something we can test here before scaling. Travis crossed his arms, nodding once. All right. What's the pitch? Zeke handed him a folded sheet, handwritten, not printed. Rotating floor leads. You, Jake, and Erica. Each takes 1 shift per week where they're the point person. Not a manager, just the support structure. They get a pay bump on that shift. They make decisions. They're the safety net. Travis unfolded the paper, reading slowly. No corporate title? None, Zeke said. Titles don't fix culture. Accountability does. Travis looked over the list again, then slid it into his apron pocket. Jake's never led a shift. He doesn't have to get it perfect. He just needs to be trusted. That night, during pre-shift, Travis read the plan aloud to the team. No fanfare. No sales pitch. Just facts. When he finished, no one clapped, but no one pushed back either. Jake looked at the floor for a long time before raising his hand slightly. What happens if I screw it up? Zeke answered from the back of the kitchen. Then we learn from it. Together. The first week of the trial was shaky. Not chaotic, but uneven. On Jake's first lead shift, the POS system froze mid-dinner rush and he panicked. Tickets backed up. 1 table left unpaid. But instead of hiding it, he stepped into the office, found Zeke wiping down a shelf, and admitted it. Zeke didn't lecture. He walked Jake through the override process, then stood beside him while they fixed the backlog. Afterward, Jake stayed an extra hour, not because he was asked, but because he wanted to. The next time the system hiccuped, he handled it without blinking. By the second week, Erica's lead shift ran smoother. She was more direct than Travis, less patient with confusion, but she knew the menu inside out and kept the kitchen flowing. At one point, when two parties showed up with overlapping reservations, she didn't ask for help. She calmly offered one group complimentary drinks at the bar, then personally reset their table once it cleared. No escalation, no tension. The staff noticed. Zeke kept his role consistent, observing, supporting, never interfering. He'd learned enough in the first few days to know when to step back. But behind the scenes, he was making structural changes. Payroll adjustments to reflect shift leads, a new bonus tier for night closers, and a direct reporting line from the floor leads to his office, bypassing any future GMs who stopped listening. He didn't announce these changes. He just implemented them one by one and trusted the impact would speak louder than any email. On the 12th night, just before close, Zeke sat at the bar nursing a club soda. The last table was finishing dessert. Travis leaned beside him, arms crossed. "You don't want to run this place forever, do you?" Zeke asked. Travis shook his head. "No, I don't want to manage. I want to build something that doesn't fall apart when one person leaves." Zeke turned toward him. "That's a better answer than I expected." They sat in silence for a while. Then Travis asked something Zeke hadn't considered. "You think the other stores are like this?" Zeke didn't answer right away. He thought about Store 5, where turnover had tripled last quarter. Store 11, where customer surveys were glowing but internal reports showed burnout. He thought about the managers he hadn't met, the floor staff he'd never spoken to. "I think I need to stop assuming they're not," he finally said. Travis nodded once. "Then I think you're ready." Zeke grinned. "Am I being promoted?" "You're finally showing up. That's worth more than a title." That night, after the doors locked and the last light flicked off, Zeke stayed behind in the dining room. Alone. No disguise. No clipboard. He walked past table 14, the booth where he first saw Travis pay for that girl's meal. The upholstery still had a small tear near the corner. He made a note to fix it. Then he walked to the bar, grabbed the house phone, and dialed his assistant. "Starting next week, clear 2 days a month," he said. "I'm visiting every store. No notice. No press. Just me and the floor." She didn't ask why. She just said okay. Before leaving, he taped a small note to the manager's office door. Not signed, not flashy. Just a quiet reminder. Leadership is service. Keep proving it. He locked up behind himself. Outside, the lot was empty. The air was sharp with the early sting of fall. Zeke didn't rush to the car. He stood still, breathing it in. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was managing a business. He felt like he was part of one.